Welcome to Luther's Tips, Tools and Training from Crimson Guitars. I'm Ben Crow. This video is brought to you by intimidation, by fear, by one of my favorite tools. It's like children. You can't really actually say which one is your favorite because they'll hear and then, it doesn't go well after that point. It's like Googling the next model of your phone on your phone. Immediately your phone stops working. So one of my favorite tools, the scraper. Now, I've put out a few videos over the last, 10 or 15 years talking about how to sharpen these things. And my method has gone through a few different iterations. But the other week I was off doing a few hour ceramics experience. During the wet process, I was using a rubber kidney scraper. In another workshop, I was playing around with some metal, and they pulled out an engineer's scraper. This is a fairly ubiquitous tool, and there's various different ways that they're sharpened and form factors and all of that, but it is so damned useful, especially for woodworkers, especially for fine, delicate woodworking with detail and precision. I'm going to show you just how good scrapers could be, can be, should be.
Burn it.
The whole point of the video is that initially I was shown how to make a scraper and then sharpen it, and it's a simple form in flat steel. It's utterly basic. Hell, the first scrapers were Stone Age pieces of flint used to prepare hides. This is as old as the hills. I was shown how to do this and I did not get the knack. And as a result of that, I avoided them for years, and that was a huge mistake. And in the end, there actually isn't a knack. In fact, I'm going to give away the whole video at this point. If you prepare the steel properly first, the actual sharpening process almost happens by itself. If you are trying to turn a burr on a piece of steel that is not flat, does not have two faces that are, at least to a certain extent, polished and coplanar, I think that's the word, you're not going to get the result you need. And it's not difficult flattening a piece of flat steel, now is it? Come on then, let's have a look. The ubiquitous woodworking scraper is a cabinet maker scraper, a cabinet scraper actually is what it's called. Just a rectangle of steel. They can be fairly thick with not very much flex, or incredibly thin, which allows you to basically turn it into a curved surface, a variable curved surface with which you can pinpoint a spot to shave down. They also come in a million different form factors. This one, as you can see, has never been sharpened. It's got the machining marks from the roller marks, I suppose, from where it was made, and all the way up to and including complex shapes or custom shapes. And these scrapers here were made from old saw blades. This is one of my favorites. Got two different curves on there, and I use this beastie a lot. Now, as with any other tool that you want to sharpen, it is all about having two surfaces meeting at a point of some sort, whether it's 90 degrees as it is in a scraper, or 30 degrees or whatever on a chisel or a plane blade. Both faces need to be finished to the same level. And the basic structure of a scraper is exactly that. It's essentially a flat piece of steel, but you've got an edge and a face. And what this actually means is, due to how you sharpen cabinet scrapers at least, we are going to turn a burr on each of those 90-degree corners, which means that this is a 4-bladed tool. Hell, actually, an 8-bladed tool if you're going to go and play around with the edges as well. This is another form factor. These are scrapers made out of old saw blades, probably 100 years ago or more, by a cabinet maker, a pattern maker, a wood carver, somebody like that. And they've all got custom shapes, customized to whatever that craftsman was doing, but in a very comfortable to use form factor, essentially. This is easy on the fingers. The same process of sharpening, albeit I tend to use a smaller burnisher. I nabbed this test body from the Crimson Guitars timber store, and I want to get rid of this paint. I have some fairly sharp scrapers that are good to go, and I'll show you what's what. Now, this is a very thick cabinet scraper, and as such it's actually designed to work on flat surfaces without putting too much flex in it. And you can see that I'm pulling out shavings, and I chose a body with paint so that you can see more clearly what is going on. Now this is a sharper edge. And I'm removing a huge amount of material very rapidly. Removing paint like this, you'd probably sit there with a sander and a mask and a noise and pain, and you'd end up with a finish, probably 60 grit or something like that, that then requires a lot more work to prepare. With a properly sharp cabinet scraper, I'm getting a finish here that is, well, almost shiny. I would not need to even sand this. If this was a flat panel, I wouldn't need to sand this. I would not have any tool marks. I should probably clamp this body down, shouldn't I? Now, if that doesn't convince you that basically scrapers are magic, I don't know what else I can say. So useful. You can also use them to carve. This one here is a lot more flexible. And I can use this to completely change the shape or finesse the shape on the top of this guitar. With more of a curve, I can go really deep in. And remove relatively thick shavings. Or I can just glide over the surface and do a finishing cut. Now, this does require sharpening on a semi-regular basis, but once you've got your scraper surfaces set, that is not a big issue. That is also not in focus, I would say. But once you have all of the surfaces prepared, and it's no longer straight out of the box with machining marks, etc., sharpening them is very, very straightforward. Just for fun, a bit of mahogany. Now, oops, peely actually. Now this will show you what I mean by surface finish. Now I'm not digging in, I'm not trying to take huge gouges of it. In fact, I'm going against the grain here by mistake. Whoops. It's like a chisel or a plane. I'm just running it flat. And I'm removing sanding marks. This has actually been sanded up to about 240 grit and is fairly nice. But I've got an almost perfect, shiny finish here. Very difficult to film. You can see what I'm talking about. You get what I'm laying down? Magic. As is the sharpening process. I'm going to sharpen this thing. You can see the where this scraper has come from the factory. There's still marks in the side, etc. And from the factory, it does have a burr on the edge. It will do something, but at this point, it's acting somewhat like a saw blade because it's rough, because it's been milled down and cut straight off the laser cutter or the machine or the shears. I don't know how they make these actually. It will cut. It doesn't have a burr that's been turned. It's just got the 90 degrees, and that does work. But that isn't the magic that you deserve. Not the magic that you deserve. This sounds like a dating site. I'm trying to set you up with a cabinet scraper. I'm all right with that. I really am. Now, the way I was taught initially to sharpen scrapers was to use my whetstones. And that's absolutely fine when you're working on the edges. You can do that on the sides, on the large surfaces. But when you're doing this, first of all, most waterstones end up with a bit of a concavity. Secondly, you end up basically cutting very, very thin grooves into your waterstones, and you don't want to do that. Now, I've moved on. And this, I suppose, product placement, so the Crimson Guitars leveling beam, but you can do this with anything nice and flat, onto which you can stick some sandpaper. I have done this many, many times with the piece of float glass and the 3M micro finishing film. I use this for sharpening chisels and things. Again, you tend to destroy paper, and that stuff's not cheap. But for my money, a leveling beam is the quickest, the best, the cheapest way of doing this. Let me show you how. Okay, I take a nice flat piece of sacrificial wood, and I've got 240 grit on one side, 400 on the other. And essentially, I'm finishing the side of the scraper here. Now you can see where this, even though it looks perfectly flat, actually isn't. I'm not taking off material all the way along, so I've got a little bit more work to do. And you want to keep it flat. I sort of fell off the edge of the board there, don't want to do that. And we're almost there. Sort of starting to see the edge. Okay. Flip over to the 400 grit. And the edge of this scraper now is, if I can show you, pretty much perfect. I'm about 1 millimeter away from the edge there. I would go further, but it's not required. The next thing to do is to sort out the thin bit. And basically I'm using this piece of wood like a shooting board. My leveling beam goes on its side, and I want to, sort that out. The problem is, if the piece of wood that I'm using is perfectly flat, I'm just going to run a groove in my paper. We don't want that. So grab yourself another piece of wood and put it up at an angle. And that face should be perfectly square. Almost, because it's not perfectly flat. Now I could turn the leveling beam off over on its side, and I tend to do this myself. I trust myself to be able to hold the scraper flat and square. And I'm still not removing material from right at the edge. You can see where it's shiny and not. So I'm gonna, like this, keep on going for a little bit. I might not be 100% square. I'm then gonna put it onto my shooting board and finesse it up. And as you've guessed, this only really needs to be done once unless you're really mistreating your blades. You can see that I'm not going in a straight line. I'm sort of moving sideways diagonally across the leveling beam. And there we go. You can see that that is now perfectly flat because, our beams are. Over to the 400 grit. And that's ready to go. Now that one corner that we've prepared has got a 90-degree angle to it, and that will scrape. That will remove material, it will take away shavings, but it will degrade fairly rapidly and will need to be sharpened again. And if you're taking huge amounts of material and you want to just do a very quick process and then get something that isn't sharp, but it's sharp, you know what I mean? Kind of like my brain at times. But I'm going to show you. This is the surface that we've prepared. I am not putting pressure on here. I'm not pushing, I'm not forcing things. I'm literally just presenting the tool to the wood. Can you hear, however, that it's still a fairly rough cut? You hear that? Over the creaking of my bench. I'm just going to tickle this with the 400 grit again, and then we'll burnish. The next stage is to work harden the steel. It feels like another little bit of magic, but you can change the molecular structure of metal just by pushing it gently by hand. And to do that, you need to have a burnisher of some sort. It is a hardened piece of polished steel, generally in a handle. Now, what I'm going to do is flatten down the top. I'm just going to put my burnisher on top of the scraper and basically draw out a small amount of metal. I'm pushing down, and through doing that, the metal is going to go to the side where there is no metal. At the same time as I'm doing this, I am work hardening that edge, which makes, well, this is why once you've turned your burr, it's going to remain sharper for longer, because you've actually changed the physical characteristics of the metal and made it harder. It's magical. I move my piece of wood over to the edge of the bench, and I'm just pushing it down flat. Now, if your burnisher isn't hard and isn't polished, it won't do this as well. And it doesn't need a huge amount of work to do that. The next stage is to turn a burr over. Now, on this one, I'm going to do it by hand. And this is the other thing that scares people. You want to have a relatively small angle. Just a degree or two, maybe 3. You see what I'm doing? Just a little bit off. So I'm holding the scraper to the piece of wood and just running my burnisher along it. I'm not putting a huge amount of pressure on, I'm not hurting myself, I'm not forcing things, I'm just running at a small angle. If you go at a bigger angle, you will end up with a scraper that has to be held when you're cutting at that sort of an angle. With a smaller angle on the burr, you've got, it's far easier to cut. But essentially, I can now feel that I've turned a micro blade over this edge. I'm just going to go back and forth a few more times. This is also work hardening the edge that I've just created. Now, if this worries you, there is another way to do it. One that means that your workbench is holding the scraper. Straight to the 400, because this is one I've been using a lot. That's prepared. And I've got a piece of wood with a little lip in the bottom. That's going to go in the vise, but I forgot a step. Let me just burnish the edge down. Okay, scraper goes in there. Another piece of wood sits in there. Let me just make sure that I'm working on the right edge. I am. And then again, a slight angle, and I'm just going to go backwards and forwards. And in just maybe a minute of work, one of the edges is sharp. So here's the one that we've been working on. You can see the front face. I'm going to put a slight curve into it because I'm working in an area here that's got a curve. Listen to the difference. Now, that pressure to bend this thin piece of steel, that's all I'm doing. I am not pushing, I'm being very, very gentle. And because I'm doing that, you won't get lines in between each pass, or not very many. And if you do, it's because you've basically serrated the edge by not sanding it to the right extent. As is the case with most tools, if you find that you're having to put actual effort, if it feels like a workout, something is wrong. Again, I may actually be going against the grain. Oh yes, I am. Look at that. And it was still cutting perfectly. I love it. And I hope you do too. Now, that process is the same whether you are sharpening a flat woodworking scraper or something with horrific little belly buttons on the edge. Same process. Flatten, carefully try and square off the sides. Not as easy on this, but once you've done that, I go in with a very small burnisher and just burnish it over after we're cutting the edge. I never actually forget that in practice, but I seem to have forgotten to tell you about it twice. The only other thing is making a scraper is as easy as taking a file and an old saw blade, flattening it, making the shape that you want. Go and buy them at Crimson Guitars if you want, but hey, go make them yourself too. Why not? Make tools, build guitars, make sawdust. Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if I have converted you to scrapers, if I have merely confirmed your suspicion that they are one of the greatest tools on the planet, or hopefully slightly demystified them and convinced you to go back and give it another go. Thanks for watching. See you soon.